communist organization for effort against that you're about to see were produced in the facilities of Cosman several months ago near the Cambodian border to the 73rd Airborne Brigade. Now, many of the captured cruisers were damaged or of poor quality, but we filmed to provide a good close-up look at the Viet operations. This is the Vietcong would like to see themselves. First sequence, we take you behind enemy lines for a report of the VC in combat. These scenes of preparation and action were probably, but they do show the Viet Cong and prisoners will be taken. The regiment sounds the attack. The attack is against an American armored personnel carrier. During the battle are marched barefoot through the jungle. Series of newsreel sequences on Viet Cong attacks against Allied units in South Vietnam with China. The first manufactured equipment. The South Vietnamese forces walk into the ambush and the Viet Cong open fire. This next sequence, the Viet Cong company commander plots an all-out attack against a small South Vietnamese hamlet. The bugler once again sounds the charge on the settlement. The communists have undergone grueling physical training, and they're identified as members of the Civilian Irregular Defense Guard and the 10th Vietnamese Government Army Division. The PWs, as in the earlier sequence, are marched off for interrogation. With the battle won. It's important to remember that the film you've seen and will see is Viet Cong propaganda. Its purpose is to show you one side, the communist side, of the conflict in the Republic of Vietnam. At the same time, it does provide a realistic insight into the motives and the methods of the VC. Now, we've seen the enemy in combat. Now let's look at another side of the communist war effort in South Vietnam, in the area of operations that shows the Viet Cong work in the fields of logistics and demolition. Much of the food, weapons, and equipment used by the Viet Cong is transported into tactical areas by walking the material across the countryside. Here, bags of rice are carried across a river and into the jungle. Women, many of them half of the communist transportation force. Another of the prime... Prisoners are equally thorough in their utilization of captured weapons and equipment. Demolition experts disassemble unexploded bombs and remove their destructive contents. Blacksmiths then use the metal to make grenade casings and gun barrels. In the guerrilla warfare that the Viet Cong are waging, nothing is wasted. Everything is utilized. A train that has been derailed is grim witness to the effectiveness of the VC tactics. Charges placed at the joints of the rails on both sides of the track can tear open gaps that are undetectable at a distance. and will almost certainly cause a derailment. Here, with the aid of a model bridge, a Vietcong instructor briefs a communist guerrilla before sending him out with the demolition team. The explosive charge is prepared by other members of the guerrilla unit. The VC move through the jungle toward their objective. The communists adapt their ways to the war they must fight. Booby traps are fashioned by hand and planted at night outside the perimeter of U.S. and South Vietnamese camps. Up to now, we've been through the eyes of the communist camera at the battlefront with the Vietcong. In this sequence now, we're going to focus on various propaganda and non-military activities of the enemy. We'll tour War Zone C with Chinese communist correspondents, visit a VC printing office, explore an underground hospital, and watch a propaganda lecture by a 4-star North Vietnamese Army general who's the political officer and commanding general of the self-proclaimed South Vietnamese Liberation Army. This third segment of our captured Vietcong newsreels opens with banners and signs welcoming communist Chinese riders on their arrival for a tour of COSVIN facilities in War Zone C. There is the customary exchange of toasts between the guests and their hosts. And as part of the welcoming reception, the representatives of the two communist nations, the communist correspondents, visit a printing plant that publishes the Vietcong Liberation paper and other propaganda leaflets and literature. They watch the setting of type by a VC craftsman, and they see the operation of the primitive press by the printer and his apprentice. The North Vietnamese Army. When these films were made, the general was the political officer and commanding general of the Communist Army in South Vietnam. Here General Ton walks among the wounded, talking with them and listening to them. Continuing his tour of the underground facilities, the general commends the hospital staff for its contributions to the Viet Cong war effort. General Ton has a final visit and a word with a wounded VC soldier, pledging continued reinforcements and communist support from the north. Now, a meeting of COSVIN officials held to plan the winter-spring offensive of 1967 and to bolster troop morale for these campaigns. The featured speaker is the chief of the political section of COSVIN, Brigadier General Tron Do. The general tells the troops that there are 400,000 men in North Vietnam that can be sent south to aid the Viet Cong forces. In conclusion, he promises that North Vietnam will never negotiate for peace until it has achieved a measure of victory in combat that can be used as a bargaining power in such negotiations. This, then, is the challenge posed by the Viet Cong and her supporters in South Vietnam. We've seen from their own motion pictures that they're resourceful, disciplined, ruthless, determined. Alert to this threat, aware of this danger, South Vietnam and her allies must meet and defeat the enemy challenge. For in this confrontation between communism and freedom, only one can prevail. Which one it'll be is simply stated. Why free men fight in the Republic of Vietnam.